Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Kickstart your imagination with Audible. Hear celebrity and music memoirs, mysteries, true crime, and more. Audible is the home of storytelling, audiobooks, podcasts, and originals. Sign up for a free trial at audible.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Denver Nuggets made a strong statement last night in the NBA Finals. They told the Heat they will not have home court advantage in Miami. The Nuggets win Game 3 by 15 to take a 2-1 lead and frustrate a sellout crowd. A sparkling triple-double for Nikola Jokic, 32 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists. 34 for Jamal Murray. Game 4 is Friday night in Miami, 5:30 tip-off on ABC. Something is wrong with the Dodgers. They've lost 4 straight, and for the second night in a row, they lose to Cincinnati in the bottom of the ninth. Reds rookie right fielder Will Benson hit a 2-run homer to end it, his first career home run in the major leagues. Nice way to get number 1. The Dodgers are now in second place in the NL West, 2 games behind Arizona. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
Street Science, you're on the air. What do you feel when you hear a record like Tupac's new one?
I love Tupac's new record.
Right, but don't you feel like that creates tension between East and West? He's talking about killing people. I had sex with your wife, and not in those words. But he's talking about, I want to see you deceased.
Yeah. To live and die in L.A., California. What you say about Los Angeles? Still the only place for me that never rains in the sun. To live and die in L.A., where every day we try to fatten our pockets. Us niggas hustle for the cash, so it's hard to knock it. Everybody got their own thing coming, see chasing worldwide through the hard times, worrying faces. Shed tears as we bury getting close to heart. What was a friend, now a ghost in the dark. Cold part about it, and got smoked by a fiend, trying to floss on him, blind to a broken man's dream. A hard lesson, court cases keep him guessing. Plea bargain ain't the option now, so I'm stressing. Cost me more to be free than a life in the pen. Making money off of cuss words, writing again. Learn how to think ahead, so I fight with my pen. Late night down, sunset, like in the zen. What's the worst they can do to me? It got me lost in hell to live and die in L.A. on bail, my angels.
KBLA Talk 1580. Rest in peace, Tupac. Okay, we are talking about black journalists, the trauma behind the headlines, with one of those journalists, James Farr, of The Conversation Live, of the LA Progressive. And we're going to get to that, but I had to start with Tupac, because yesterday Tupac got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and you have Tupac history.
I do. Thank you for having me here this morning.
Yeah,
Dominic.
thanks for being here. Live and in person, by the way, on YouTube at KBLA 1580.
That's right. I love this place. I love what you guys are doing here.
Thank you.
This is such a blessing for our community, really for our children, because what they're going to be able to learn through these master classes you guys are putting on hour after hour, day after day, and congratulations on the 2nd year anniversary coming up.
Yes, that's a big milestone, and I'm proud to be celebrating that on Juneteenth. Yes, indeed. So, tell me your Tupac story.
Oh wow, July 4th, 1996, many have probably seen, if you've seen Dear Mama, you've searched the internet, you've seen his last live performance at the House of Blues. Well, I was the 22-year-old kid who produced that show, and it was a harrowing task to get that done. A lot of heavy lifting, a lot of fear, a lot of concerns. But what we didn't know, and no one knew, obviously, is that, just shorter than 2 months later, he would meet his demise in Vegas. But it was an epic event. It's something that I kind of never talked about until recently. I shied away from interviews and things. I didn't want any attention. But I decided to pin that because I wanted to pay homage to him. I knew him coming through Richmond, California in the Bay Area. My cousin Ronnie, shout out to Ronnie, sung on Brenda's Got a Baby and with Digital Underground. And so I just wanted to, honor him in a way and, say, hey, that's my contribution to the culture. I'm 50 this year. Hip hop is 50 this year. And let's go.
And that was a big deal. I mean, you just decided. I mean, seems, I know, more of a big deal in hindsight. All the stuff seems like more of a big deal in hindsight. But if you were around in LA in the 90s, all the various force. I mean, hip hop was like a minefield at that moment.
Whew.
It really was.
It was very, very, I don't want to say dangerous, but you had to be careful.
Yeah,
right?
It was, well, it could be dangerous, but it was chaotic. It was super fun and exciting, but also you got Death Row, you got Ruthless, you got the regular old streets. We were in the Wild West 90s.
Yes.
Right? And forget about hip hop. We were still coming out of the crack scenario, so yeah, it was a lot.
And most of us, I mean, you got to look at it at this time. Most of the people who were performing, who were working on that show, we were all under 30.
Yeah.
So we were in our warrior phases of our life. And so, anybody could get the smoke, and when you look at that hindsight, as I come into this second season of my life and my second win, I really realized, wow, that was special.
My dear friend, the poetess, was an announcer on that show.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Well, I guess you must be happy that Pac got his star yesterday.
Pac Ben had a star.
Yeah, right. He had the virtual star. He got stars everywhere. He got stars in Compton and Watts and Leimert Park, and we don't even have a Walk of Fame.
And when I first met him in the early 90s, to me, he was work. It was a show. It was a bag on the other side of it. He was just another rapper who needed backstage passes, right? So I didn't realize who he was, but then I came to understand. I'm like, something's a little different. I'm like, he had swag, but it wasn't Bay Area swag. It was just totally a different energy. And I saw him a few different times almost morph into different people, right?
Like Gemini.
There you go with
Takes
that Gemini.
one to know one. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to touch on that because, yesterday he got his star on the Walk of Fame. But you wrote an article recently in one of the platforms that you communicate on, the LA Progressive, laprogressive.com. It's called Black Journalists, The Trauma Behind the Headlines. And it's a side of our work that's really talked about, actually. And I guess you could say, well, every journalist has to deal with trauma, whether they're reporting on war, mental health, poverty. Why do you think, what moved you to say this is more extreme when you're talking about African American journalists or media producers of any kind?
Sure, because we carry our blackness in the spaces anyway, whether we're in this profession and other professions, we show up black first. And so the task of even getting to the assignment, you have to be black and have to deal with some certain things. But what I realized is, at least with me, is these things started to affect me. I know we're not supposed to be close to the story. And we follow up on stories, and I meet such incredible, wonderful people. I think about the Joseph family in Tampa, Florida.
Right.
Like, I would have loved to have met them under a different circumstance.
The family of Andrew Joseph III.
Yes.
Right.
And so I have to be mindful that I'm a part of their trauma because I'm asking probing questions. I'm asking to get better understanding. Sometimes you have to ask again. And so my very presence, my phone call, my text messages, my emails, it could trigger them back into something. And so you're taught to separate, but it's hard to separate if you're a human being. I'm not a callous cold person.
Well, and that's kind of a classic journalist. That's the way traditional journalists have been taught. Now, with a lot of writing and communicating about news going on social media or blogs or even radio shows, and the merging of opinion and traditional news reporting, you see a lot of people getting very close to stories.
Sure.
But whether you're being a traditional journalist and trying to keep that arm's length distance, or whether you are one of those folks that's involved with the story, you're going to have a very up-close look at some stuff that you may or may not be ready for. I want to talk about that. What does it mean? How do we process it when we come forward? And you're always welcome into the conversation. 800-920-1580. I'm Dominique DePrima here with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey LA, keep your utility bills low this summer while making your home the cool place to be. LADWP can help you save hundreds with air conditioner and thermostat rebates, plus free energy efficient home upgrades and simple tips to help you beat the heat and save money. Visit ladwp.com/cool-LA. The Los Angeles Public Library proudly presents the June Jubilee inaugural event commemorating Juneteenth. Join us on June 10th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Central Library as we celebrate the rich Black culture in our city. This free event will include a special opening celebration featuring African drums procession and a libation ceremony at 9 a.m. along with speakers, workshops, live entertainment, and more for the whole family. Parking is only $1 with a validation. Learn more at lapl.org/Jubilee. That is lapl.org/JUBILEE.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life and your choices with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age. But there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
At the United States Postal Service, we're reinventing our network to help keep your business moving. With new shipping options to deliver better value, greater flexibility to conveniently reach your customers, more confident shipping with new informed delivery features, and new electric vehicles for a cleaner, brighter future. Fast, reliable, perfectly orchestrated. The United States Postal Service, delivering for America. Learn more at USPS.com/movingforward.
If car designers can make cars look like anything, why are there so many boring cars? Why not a car that looks like an ancient sword? Or the future? The sky isn't even the limit at Nissan. Why be boring when you can make a katana blade slice through traffic? That's the Nissan Z. Or something from the future whizzing by. And that's the Aria. Nissan. We design for thrill. 2023 Aria has limited availability. See dealer for financing details.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
James Farr is here. He's a producer. He's got a film festival. He's a member of the National Association of Black Journalists, a documentarian. And in your article, this recent article from the LA Progressive, Black Journalists, the Trauma Behind the Headlines, you say that African-American journalists, I'm reading here, African-American journalists are disproportionately exposed to trauma as part of their environmental and experiential work. They're more likely to cover stories about violence, crime, and poverty, which can take a toll on their mental health. I'm going to have to give you an amen on that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's something I manage. And we were talking about this off the air. I won't watch a George Floyd video over and over again. I'll watch it once. I know what happened. I'll talk about it as much as you want to talk about it. But I don't want my dreams and I don't want my psyche filled with images of Black Death. But you're a documentarian. It's a little different.
Yeah, it is, and I have to watch. Right? I don't have the option of not watching. I need to,
over and over.
But I'm also looking for different things than perhaps the casual viewer, right? Like, because I'm looking at either the officer's conduct, tactically what they've done. It's a myriad of things that you're looking into. You may want to isolate on something specific in a frame, and so it requires a frame by frame by frame many times, and that you're right. It is seared in my psyche. I cannot undo it. I cannot unsee it. But what I had to really understand is that how is this affecting me outside of the work, and how am I bringing this energy home to my family, to my friends, to my other relationships, and it got to a point to where, everybody was on my last nerve.
And that's a sign that your mental health is taking a hit, right?
Yeah. Triggered. You're triggered. You're uneasy. I'd come back off of the road, and it would take some time to kind of decompress. Family's happy to see you, but you kind of need your own space for a second, and those things weren't just healthy. And, I'm thankful for a beautiful wife, beautiful family, beautiful friends who, hey, bruh, you good?
Right. So I think this all kind of came to a head when you embedded with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. What was that experience?
Well, I was in Buffalo, New York, around today, around this time last year. I was in Buffalo, New York several times, and for some extended periods of time, and then I went to well, let's talk about Buffalo first, right? The racist terrorist, white supremacist attack in the top supermarket where 10 Black folks were gunned down.
I mean, elders. Grandmamas and grandpapas.
On 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And so you're there, and you're learning about what happened in the event, but then you also see the community, and you also understand the real fear that the people had, because it wasn't the first time that this happened in the city. And so, I found myself, when I went back, I was reporting back on Dr. Molina's show, and I went into the grocery store the day that it opened, and it was just business as usual. The checkers were checking. I wrote the ubiquitous sound of capitalism, produce online too. It was just normal. And so the residents there were really given a false choice. When we see these type of acts of violence and terrorism, you didn't see the Twin Towers rebuilt. There are a myriad of places that are memorialized and considered sacred and hallowed ground. But it's tough, because you have to ask we're on radio, I can't say, you have to ask the questions to people, right?
Right.
Like, and in your mind but you have to ask.
I mean, the great journalist Sylvia Chase one time told me one of the biggest skills for a journalist is finding the nice way to ask the hard question.
It's not even the hard, and I agree, right?
But actually, there's really no nice way to ask about your dead child.
I agree with that.
I don't know that there is a nice way that doesn't re-traumatize.
It's this one question that always bothers me that I have to ask. How do you feel? And I'm looking at you crying, and I see your family impacted, and I see the devastation, but I have to ask you, how do you feel? Because the reader wants to know how you feel. So it's rhetorical. It could be insulting.
I'm trying to think, do I ask that question? I mean, I do ask it, but there are times when it has to be, what's your reaction, or, how is this affecting you? Or it's really the same question.
It's the same question, but, my style is gut. I really want to get to the root of what it is. And so I want to capture your words.
I'm laughing because James Farr is a Virgo. I'm a Gemini. It's just like the Tavis, Smiley, Dominique DePrima dynamic. You go for the gut, and I'm more likely to just empathize with you and see what flows, because all roads lead to the truth if that's your intention, I believe.
Absolutely.
But nevertheless, folks end up crying. And so, that back to the trauma. And I don't think that I read the piece and I don't feel like you're whining and going, oh, woe is me. We black journalists have it so tough. But I think it's a question that's not just for journalists. It's also for consumers of media right now. Is how are you processing this? Because to just fill our minds with Black Death, fill our auras with Black Death without having any means of processing that is irresponsible to our own mental health.
It absolutely is, and really it's the manner of death in what I cover, right? I don't.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different.
There's no natural causes.
There's no natural causes.
Not at all.
A life, a soul was taken away from this earth, from their family, from their loved ones, from their community, and in many cases of no fault of their own. So it's a little bit different.
So after Tops Market in Buffalo and dealing with the aftermath of a massive white supremacist terror attack, you do what?
I go to Akron, Ohio, where Jalen Walker was hit 46 times. Reportedly, up to 90 bullets were fired. There was, at that time, speculation, or the investigation hadn't been completed as to whether or not he was in possession of a weapon. But what we do know is when he was shot, he was running away from officers, and the weapon was not in his possession or nowhere near to him. But what was interesting about this, I saw a very conservative Kojic family, right? Jalen Walker's family, who seemed a little bit distant from the Black Lives Matter movement. But time and time again, what you see is these families kind of welcomed into this not so exclusive club.
A terrible club.
A terrible club, right? And so you kind of watched their guard get peeled off as they began to realize what Black Lives Matter is grassroots is about is not what they had heard through conservative media or even within their own congregation. There's only so many people, unfortunately, who could relate to what they're experiencing. And I saw families from across the nation there to love them, there to kind of guide them through this process. And, for me, it was dinner with them and dinner with activists who were beaten by police, who were peacefully protesting. So it's a lot that you have to see, experience, be around. My role in that space is to just sit and watch, just sit and observe. And
then write.
And that's a whole nother process. But so from there, I would end up in Tampa, Florida, covering a trial of Andrew Joseph III, who, through police negligence, they put this boy out on a highway, a very dark highway.
A 14-year-old.
14-year-old.
I mean, really
boy.
a child.
A child. And I had to sit in that courtroom, sit next to his grandmother, listen to the probing questions. I mean, you really see the vile evilness of the justice system. You see lawyers, they're doing their job, right? But the way that they probed that mother, questioning her childhood. This boy was you would want him as your son. I would want him as my son. It just made no sense. And so to have to sit through that, and then they win, they're awarded.
The Joseph family,
they did
win, yes.
Yeah, they were. Well, did they win? They were
awarded.
They
awarded a $15 million judgment, but you say that victory or feeling of victory was fleeting because
it was because I was there with them in spirit and joy and celebration and smiling and I was genuinely happy for them. But what I knew, it was only going to be temporary because qualified immunity and appeals would rear its head. The system does not back down that easily. Right.
I mean, they won $15 million. Deanna Joseph was talking on a black press call with Black Lives Matter that, that starts to get whittled away with legal fees, and there's always another court date and another appeal and another delay due to qualified immunity. And so even though they did win, they're still fighting.
They're still fighting. And let's be clear, they haven't received a dime. Not one penny. So it's still a fight going into 9 years later.
Right. It's a theoretical win.
Yes.
But that's good. I'll take a theoretical win,
Sure.
but clearly it's not enough. So after these, this really insane or intense, let me put it that way, circuit, what happens?
For me,
yeah,
my cousin self-transitioned, and that was a difficult thing to process. You know,
and clearly you did not report on that.
No.
Yeah, that's some things we don't write about or talk about on the radio.
Yeah, that was something that I was just trying to make sense of. I couldn't understand, and it was difficult. So I found myself. I remember being at his memorial service, and I was, you know, tasked with, you know, videotaping it, and something I've done 1,000 times, cut a camera on, just seemed difficult. You know, setting the dial to record seemed difficult. But I wasn't realizing what was going on. You know, I just thought I was anxious, you know, I really don't want to be here, you know, kind of things. And so it really came into the beginning of January. You had invited me to come on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I had agreed to do it. I showed up to do the show. And immediately after that, I got off social media. I didn't do any writing. I didn't do anything because at first I thought, you know, dry January, right, is the thing, right? Well, I said I'm going to kind of take a break in a different space. That month turned into 3 months. You know, I saw the Tyree Nichols videos and, you know, watched that over and over again. And then attorney Kerry Harper distributed autopsy photos of Charles Towns in Altadena.
Yeah.
And I had seen autopsy photos before and it never bothered me. You know, it just is what it is. But it
always bothers me.
it was something different happening here. And I couldn't articulate it to my family. I couldn't articulate it to friends. I felt like I really didn't have anyone to discuss this type of stuff because, you know, you get to do some fun interviews, right? It's you don't only deal with these hard subjects, right, and calamity and stuff like that. I'm not the person you want at the party, right? What do? You don't want to know, you know what I mean? Because I'll clear a room out. Because my stories and what I do, it's not party conversation. So I kind of went into a little reclusive mode for just a little bit. And, you know, people checked in, hey, we haven't seen anything. We haven't heard anything. What's going on with you? And I'm so appreciative to that because we're, as a community and as a culture, becoming more aware of mental wellness. And when, you know, something seemed off for some people, they reached out. And that meant a lot because a lot of times when you're out there, you know, journalists are kind of these lone wolf type personalities. You know, we move in different spaces. I don't have a problem talking to the police. I don't have a problem meeting with the police. Like, that's my lane. That's my role. And I have to go on both sides to have a better understanding. And so, you know, that healthy break, right, that refresh, that reprieve, that getting back to myself, that getting back to finding some joy, it was a process.
James Farr is my guest. We got news, traffic, and sports right now. I want to hear about that process. I want to hear about how we process when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The family of a mother of 4 shot to death by a neighbor in Florida last Friday in an ongoing dispute over where her children played is pleading for justice. Pamela Diaz says her 35-year-old daughter had a lot to live for.
You may look at her and say, she didn't have much. She had it all. She had love. She had 4 beautiful children.
58-year-old Susan Lorenz, who was white, was arrested Tuesday night in the shooting death of A.J. Owens, who was a black in Ocala, that's north of Orlando. Smoke choking the skies across the Northeast is expected to linger at least until next week. It's the product of wildfires ripping across Canada, and it's a concern for those with underlying health conditions. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Kickstart your imagination with Audible. Hear celebrity and music memoirs, mysteries, true crime, and more. Audible is the home of storytelling, audiobooks, podcasts, and originals. Sign up for a free trial at audible.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Denver Nuggets made a strong statement last night in the NBA Finals. They told the Heat they will not have home court advantage in Miami. The Nuggets win Game 3 by 15 to take a 2-1 lead and frustrate a sellout crowd. A sparkling triple-double for Nikola Jokic, 32 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists. 34 for Jamal Murray. Game 4 is Friday night in Miami, 5:30 tip-off on ABC. Something is wrong with the Dodgers. They've lost 4 straight, and for the second night in a row, they lose to Cincinnati in the bottom of the ninth. Reds rookie right fielder Will Benson hit a 2-run homer to end it, his first career home run in the major leagues. Nice way to get number 1. The Dodgers are now in second place in the NL West, 2 games behind Arizona. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Everybody in the house, make some noise!
Is there a better day of the year to celebrate the anniversary of the only unapologetically progressive talk station west of the Mississippi, focused on issues that impact the black community?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
We think not. A station that amplifies black voices like yours with hosts and guests who look and sound like you. Celebrating our second anniversary on Juneteenth. We're KBLA Talk 1580. And you ain't seen nothing yet.
Did you know that all City of LA renters have rights? Check out these 3 facts. Residential tenants can't be evicted without reason or just cause. Eviction protection still exists for unpaid COVID-19 rental debt due before March 31st, 2023. And you have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice. 5 days. Many Angelinos may be at risk of losing their home, and that's why we want you to know your rights. Learn more at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home. JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Sunday, June 18th, come out to Africatown in Lamert Park for the Juneteenth Independence Revolution commemoration. The Independence Revolution will be part of a 3-day weekend to celebrate Juneteenth. Join in the national hashtag Wave of Freedom, where Black people across the country will stand in solidarity to demand reparations for Black American descendants of slavery. Hear from the frontline organizations who are fighting for better conditions for Black LA. Bring your dad to be part of the Honor Thy Fathers ceremony, which will acknowledge dozens of Black fathers in the community. See performances from some of LA's top local artists. Shop with a variety of local Black merchants selling food, clothes, art, and more. The Juneteenth Independence Revolution is a free event for the entire family. Sunday, June 18th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., come to Africatown in Lamert Park to celebrate Black Independence Day. The Juneteenth Independence Revolution is brought to you by Africatown Enterprise, the African Village Vendors Association at Lamert Park, Black Lives Matter LA, Downtown Crenshaw, and Destination Crenshaw.
Big tobacco cigarette butts filter practically nothing and are made of microplastics that are toxic and cunning. More than 15,000 fibers lurk in every cigarette butt you see. Could they harm your families? Quite possibly. They could end up inside of you, your bodies, their prey. New studies even indicate possible links to mutations in DNA. An evil lie with a future's worth of harm. To the world, now you know, so sound the alarm. Learn more at undo.org.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
You got a big mouth. Hello, Joe, you're up. Welcome.
We're unapologetically progressive, and we don't black down.
Talking with journalist James Farr, Black journalist, The Trauma Behind the Headlines. That's the name of his article, and that's the name of our conversation. Congratulations to you, by the way, 7 years of the conversation live.
Yeah, we're coming into our 7th season. This upcoming July will be premiering. My first guest, I'm going to sit down with the new chief of Pasadena Police Department, Gene Harris, and I'm looking to really understand what he's learned in his first 6 months on the job, unpack a few things.
You said July?
Yeah, July.
You think he'll be around that long? Pasadena, we going through the police chiefs.
I mean, yeah, we've seen 5 in the last 5 years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And rightly so. And so you know, I'm fair. I've sat down with all of them.
Yeah.
I understand their job. I understand what they can and cannot say, but you know, I'm not one that's going to say, okay, he's a black police chief, he should show up.
He gets a
differently.
pass, right?
No.
So before we move on, how do folks access the conversation live?
Oh, the conversation live can be accessed on LA Progressive's Facebook page, LA Progressive's website, also on all your streaming platforms like Roku and Apple TV and Fire TV under Pasadena Media.
Okay, you stay busy. So we were talking about, you know, this embedding that you did with Black Lives Matter, where you went from the white supremacist terror attack in Buffalo to covering Jalen Walker's horrible police shooting in Akron, to Tampa, Florida, and the finally court day for the Joseph family, the family of Andrew Joseph III. And then coming home and kind of pulling away from social media, pulling away from everything. And I at some point you decided to write this article.
Mm-hmm.
And was that part of your re-entry into the stream? Is it part of your healing, this conversation?
Yeah, it was. I had filed a couple of more stories ahead of this. And even came here and came on your show and talked about a case that I had been tracking. So that kind of re-triggered me back into
Sorry. Maybe I need to check with your wife before I invite you on the show.
But yes, it was through what I once I opened up, right, and started sharing with folks that I felt comfortable with. I heard you talking with another guest that men need a place to mope, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so once I felt comfortable in that space, part of it, I write so much. There's so many things I've never published. And so I was always journaling, but never understood that I was journaling. And in this instance, it was important for me to release this, to let this go, to acknowledge it, but then let it go, and to honor the work that I had done. But again, I wrote this for journalists. Like, I know
right.
I'm like, I can't be the only one.
No, I mean, I absolutely can relate. That's why I do things like, I'm only going to watch this once. Sometimes on the weekend, I might not keep up on the news. I might do a crash course on Sunday because I feel like I need mental health breaks. I limit the amount of trauma porn, as folks call it. For you, it's different because not only are you a documentarian who's got to go back over the footage, as a print journalist, you're also shaping, reshaping, and shaping. You know, we do show prep. We read articles and watch videos and make sure we're ready to talk about a thing, but it's still a little different, right?
Yeah, the writing process is totally different, and I'm a long storyteller. My pieces are at minimum 2,000. I think this last piece was somewhere around 3,000 words. So you better strap in and really sit with it. But in that process, like you were saying, it is the reshaping, it is the reframing, it is the editing, it is the rewriting, it is. And while you're doing all of that, one of the first things we learn in English and in writing is words are symbols. They're not just a 10 characters or 5 characters that make a word. They draw you to a visual image. So each word, each paragraph, each punctuation keeps you back in that space. I'm not talking about the fire department saving a cat up in a tree. Right.
Although you could.
I could. But, so for me, it's going back into it. It's listening again to audio recordings. I record a lot of things, and my style is more I want to bring the subject's voices into the piece more than my voice, and then I'll kind of offer a little bit of commentary and kind of to navigate us through the story. But if I could tell your story, your situation in your words, it's not what I think, it's what you said. And in doing that, that's listening to, if you think about the time that I'm out there on the road, that's hours.
Right.
Hours of transcriptions, rereading.
And traveling while black.
Which,
if you're already on edge or you're already, that can escalate. What did you talk in your article about black mental health, and what were your takeaways? You've been a journalist for a minute. It's not like this is new to you, but clearly it leveled up in terms of, the impact on your psyche here. So what were your takeaways in terms of how we ought to process or things that are helpful?
What I took away from this is the importance of talking to other people, right? And finding someone safe. And your wife is not that sounding board. That's not her space in relationship. Maybe even your family. I can't talk to my mom about this stuff. She's probably listening this morning, but
hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom. Because she says, son, she's praying, she's all these things. I'm like, don't worry about it. So finding space with someone that you can talk to and confide in was an important thing. Getting more walks, right? More exercise, more out there in nature. Finding things that you enjoy, right? Away from the work or the subject.
Yeah, not to be a workaholic.
Right.
I feel like some of that moping or sharing, it can happen in a professional space with fellow journalists who at least understand. But you're talking about getting all the way away from it, decompressing in nature, taking a social media break, and you don't set any limits on yourself as far as what I've described. I'm only going to watch this once. I'm not going to keep looking at these pictures. How do you protect yourself within the work, I guess is the question.
I have to be vulnerable to the work, right? And I have to be open to the work. And so I can't prescribe a boundary because I know that doesn't make sense.
It sounds like 12 Kinds of Crazy, James. I'm going to tell you right now, living without boundaries is like one of the definitions for mental illness.
Well, so since you talk about boundaries, I've learned to establish boundaries in other spaces.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and, because we show up in spaces and people think because you write or you're I'm not popular, I'm not famous, I'm not in that, but
all right, James.
But people think they can say anything to you, right?
Right.
and like my mom would say, if you cut me, I'll bleed. So
talking to James Farr, but the conversation is really about black journalists, the trauma behind the headlines. Many times we're processing and trying to get the word out about things with fewer resources as well. How do we create comfort, safety, and boundaries without compromising the work? You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Tina Turner's hometown to build a statue in her honor. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News. On May 24, news spread of the death of the queen of rock and roll, Tina Turner, who died at 83 years old. Turner's representatives say she died of natural causes after long illness. The mayor of Tina's hometown has since revealed plans to build a statue in honor of Turner. Bill Rawls Jr., mayor of Brownsville, reveals his hope to have the sculpture placed in Heritage Park near the high school Tina attended as a teenager. She was born in the same town in 1939. Rest in peace to the queen of rock and roll, Tina Turner. I'm Maisha Cairo for KBLA Talk 1580, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Have you faced discrimination in Los Angeles? The City of LA Civil Rights Department can help. They investigate private sector discrimination in LA City in commerce, education, employment, and housing. If you're facing discrimination, submit a complaint online for free at laisforeveryone.com. That's laisforeveryone.com or call 213-978-1845.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for education as a right, not a privilege. Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science is a private, non-profit, community-founded, student-centered university committed to cultivating diverse health profession leaders who are dedicated to social justice and health equity for underserved populations. CDU does this through outstanding education, clinical service, and community engagement. Recently, Charles Drew University made history by opening only the 5th medical school at an historically black university. Congratulations, South LA, and congratulations to the dean of the medical school, Dr. Deborah Protho-Stith. CDU is now training doctors and providing $90 million in annual economic benefit to Watts and surrounding neighborhoods. To apply for medical school, get more information, or sign your child up for the Junior Doctors Saturday School program, visit cdrewu.edu. That's cdrewu.edu. At KBLA, we are dedicated to equity in education and ending healthcare apartheid, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Be heard. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Journalist, producer, film documentarian, and NABJ, as that's the Association of Black Journalists member, James Farr is here. We've been talking about black journalists, the trauma behind the headlines. If you want to see the article, go to laprogressive.com. It's very, very, very interesting. And, you know, I want to make sure you don't get out of here without telling folks, you know, what your message is for journalists, because I think as black journalists particularly, we tend to be doing things not just with racism and traveling while black, but also oftentimes under-resourced, right? So creating that that cushion of safety for your mental health, but still telling the stories that no one wants to tell, and at the same time many times bombarded, right? Your inbox is full of scary videos. Mine is, and I'm not a hard-charging journalist, you know what I mean? How do you what do you want to share?
As I was saying a little bit earlier, I want journalists to feel comfortable talking to other journalists and to know that there are resources through the NABJ and through NAMI. If you don't have a therapist, find one. You know, if you can confide in a pastor or clergy, to tap into those resources. And we share anyway, right? It's what we do. It's what we are probably most comfortable doing.
National Alliance on Mental Illness,
yes.
NAMI.
Yes. Yeah. But seek out, and if you don't know, contact me, and I'll do what I can to try to help connect you to someone.
I'll try to untraumatize you along with untraumatizing me. I mean, some folks might say, well, look, it goes with the territory. Cops have dangerous jobs. They always talk about it. Firefighters have stress. Like, every job has its stress. So why is this, even a conversation on some level, right? For me, we're kind of raised with this suck it up mentality. Suck it up, keep it pushing.
Well, because the journalism, the films, the everything else is not who I am. I am a husband, I'm a father, and I have
entrepreneur,
social entrepreneur. And so that's how I self-identify. And I'm Black, right? So all of those things precede the work. And so the work isn't the whole of me, it's just part of me. And not letting that part become the whole is what's most important.
I mean, and as part of this period of time in your life, right, where you're processing this, your cousin, you said transitioned.
Yes.
Very young person.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you the question you ask others. How do you feel? I mean, with all of this together, your cousin, this journey of trauma and the journalism.
Well, through this work, you understand the reality of life. Through this work, you see some things. This wasn't work. I'm a second generation preacher's kid, pastor's kid. I come from a very religious and faith-based family. And something that we often say is, may God's will be done. Mm-hmm. We're not always comfortable or even prepared for what that ultimate may be in many situations. And so that was a choice that he chose. It may not be for me or his mom or anyone else to completely understand. That was his choice. It doesn't make it okay for us. You know what I mean? It's still difficult to kind of process.
Of course.
But, it made me appreciate some things because I missed an opportunity to see him when he was down in Southern California, just scheduling and some other stuff. And so it made me appreciate family, things that are, or people who are closer to you, and to not take things for granted.
Mm. Yeah, when we come forward, we'll have, just a few minutes before we hand off to Tavis Smiley. And we've been talking about the trauma and how Black journalists are dealing with that. I want to take at least a minute in processing this to look at our responsibility. Because as Black journalists, perhaps and I'm not going to say perhaps, because I believe we do have a greater responsibility because our community has such a great need. And we have a need to change the narrative. So what is that responsibility and how does that play into maintaining good mental health and balance within the space? You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Bob Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talents, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, could potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
And we're talking with James Farr. Before we get, into our last few minutes here, tell folks how to follow you.
Twitter, @JamesFarrLive. Facebook, The Conversation Live. Facebook, Conversation Live, James Farr Live. Instagram, all the handles are pretty consistent across the platform. And you can obviously read over at the LA Progressive.
So what is our responsibility? I mean, I'm in people's ears every morning. You're in their eyeballs and their brains. And we as Black people are oftentimes fighting a narrative nationally, internationally, that is anti-Black. Mm-hmm. So what is our responsibility? As role models, as game changers in the narrative, as soldiers for justice in a way, really?
Our responsibility is to not black down, as you say here at KBLA, right? To be unapologetic about telling the truth. And so we're going to tell the story through our lens and through our influence. And so we have to do that, right? And for those of us who are in spaces where we can freely speak, right, and freely write and freely produce.
Which are very rare.
It is.
I mean, LA Progressive, KBLA, but they're very rare.
It is. And that's what.
Black-owned helps.
Black-owned helps. And so with that responsibility, right, comes telling the truth, right, to really document and set records straight. Those who aren't going to agree with you aren't going to agree with you. Those who are will. But we have to show up every day in the best versions of ourselves and get these stories out. It's so important. I remember Fragrance in Buffalo saying in front of that church, in front of that altar, how it could have been her that was murdered, right? Okay. And she told me when I sidebarred with her, that I want you to let them know I'm alive and don't forget us.
Mm. But now you're also a traditional journalist. I'm one that believes you can only see through your own lens. You write for LA Progressive. You're unapologetic in your viewpoints, but you're fact-based.
Yes.
So how do you balance that, right? I personally don't think there's any such thing as objectivity, but how do you process that?
Well, the facts are the facts. It is, now the facts can be constructed, right?
Right, because there's infinite facts, and we choose the ones we highlight.
Right. So, I mean, I'm a Black man. My father was a Black man. My uncles are Black men. My son is a Black boy. And so that does not go away. That is my identity. And so I have that responsibility because other outlets, as you say, they're going to spin a narrative, right? They're going to run with the first thing the police say. And Anthony McClain, they said he was a gang member. Well, they didn't know that when they stopped him and killed him.
Right. And that's we can do a whole conversation live about that, right? But, I mean, in the words we choose, back to words being symbols, they can skew a story. And I think skilled journalists know that, no matter how much they say they're objective.
Yeah, I mean, I hear Tavis say all the time, we have to interrogate what we're reading. Don't just take it for what it is, right? Read between the lines, which is what we're talking about here, the trauma in between the lines. So we have to tell these stories.
Well, James Farr, speaking of telling stories and speaking of Tavis Smiley, Dr. Cornel West is coming on next hour with Tavis Smiley, in Tavis's show, live and in person. Of course, Dr. West is running for president. So that is going to be a very big deal. You can watch it on YouTube. You can listen to it here on KBLA 1580. And I know you and I will both have our ears tuned into that. And I thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Dominique, for having me as always. Agape.
Agape. Look, history is now. It's right now. History is KBLA at this moment. We are making it together. I'm Dominique DePrima. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the...
She didn't have much. She had it all. She had love. She had